have started. This afternoon's presentation appears very exciting, and I'm sure that our renowned scholar will do justice to the topic. I'll just share a few thoughts with you. As young researchers, it is important to recognize that becoming a citizen must and ought to be justified. Some things that you do that qualifies you as a citizen. In this case, we're talking about becoming a global academic citizen. I'm sure that our scholar will be delving deeper into the subject. But I'll share a few thoughts as I indicated earlier. It is inherent in the name and in a topic that we're going to be discussing and listening to our scholar today about the word citizen. And I have said somewhere that it comes a point in time that to be a citizen is in being, not becoming. Gets to a certain point. And that means you would have satisfied certain processes, you would have taken certain steps in terms of knowledge, skills, competencies, certifications, and so on and so forth, that permit you to become a citizen. In our case, to be a citizen of this country, the Constitution prescribes the processes, the requirements that make you a citizen of our land. Similarly, to be a global research citizen, a global scholar, a global academic, there ought to be certain processes that one has to go through. The times when we used to think that becoming an academic was in just sitting in your one small corner, doing your own bit of science and or writing and presenting it for review, those times are over. You cannot just simply be an academic within just the four walls of this university. Indeed, our university has ceased to be four walls. It is a global university. Our university is an international one that is recognized so nicely and sometimes so badly that the slightest mishappening in this university would be recorded from far and near and would be shared on the space of the internet. It is in this regard that I want to urge all of us young researchers to note that in today's academic environment, we ought to break the bounds and the boundaries of our discipline, our small research niche, and breaking to understand even the concepts and underpinnings of others so that you can be truly global in exercising your academic prowess. And I'm sure that this afternoon we have in Professor Samuel Lai someone who will give us some of these golden nuggets to help us be able to achieve our goal in becoming global academic citizens. On that note, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, particularly for those of you online, I'd like to thank you for your continued support for the Young Researchers Forum and for the pursuit of management's ideals in inculcating in the young researcher the ability to look beyond the four walls of this great institution. I welcome you and wish all of us great listening. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Elisa Wisudab. Another round of applause. And now that The landlord or the representative of the landlord has welcomed us. I think it's apt that we invite God, so it was an oversight earlier, to come and sit with us so we could have a successful deliberation. So Reverend Father, now, better late than never. Thank you.
So shall we pray? Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Almighty and ever-living God, we are so much grateful to you for the gift of our lives. We thank you for this opportunity you have given us to gather, to deliberate, and to see how best your gifts of intelligence and ingenuity that you have planted in us, we may be able to move from our own four corners into global space. We thank you for the gift of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We thank you for what you use to do for humanity and for the entire world. As we gather, we entrust our dear brother, Professor Laryea, into your hands. We thank you for what you have accomplished through him. And we pray you, O Lord, that you grant him all the inspiration and insight that he needs to be able to help us to also climb the ladder of academia. We pray for all those who are gathered with us online, that all of us may have a fair share of our deliberations. These and many blessings we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father. And for those joining us from elsewhere in the world, it's customary that KNUST, anytime we gather, we pray at the beginning and also at the end. So we're just following tradition, and we have no doubt that God has certainly come to sit with us and that we're going to have a successful event. The Young Researchers Forum exists because the Office of Grants and Research of the university exists. And therefore, as the father or the director of the Office of Grants and Research, under whose auspices the Young Researchers Forum rides, we would like to invite Professor Philip Ncheje, who is joining online, to give us his remarks. Professor Ncheje, a round of applause, please.
Colleague lecturers, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the Prof has indeed spoken very well. I think somewhere last 2 years, as an effort to operationalize the Team 2, that is impactful research and innovation of the university's action plan, the Young Researchers Forum was established or was formed, and these comprised young, enterprising, and resourceful faculty that were put together by the Vice Chancellor. Indeed, I'm happy to say that I was the first chairman of this great group. The purpose of the Young Research Forum is to prioritize the development of skills in grantsmanship, as well as research communications. In addition, I think the Young Researchers Forum is also expected to lead and also coordinate research-related activities across our various colleges. And not only that, they're supposed to serve as a link between what is happening at the colleges and then the Office of Grants and Research, and ultimately the Vice Chancellor's office. I'm happy to be part of this afternoon's program, and we are trusting God that our speaker for this afternoon, Professor Samuel Laryea, will do justice to the topic that we've asked him to do. I think as a university, as the Prof said, we are keen on developing our young researchers and making sure that they become global citizens when it comes to research. And I am very optimistic that you have very resourceful, very enterprising young researchers across the university who are willing and ready to become global citizens as far as research is concerned. So this afternoon, as I add my voice to that of the Pro-VC, let us enjoy the presentation by our renowned scholar this afternoon, Professor Samuel Laryea, and I'm sure we will not leave this platform the same. On that note, I say God richly bless us all, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Philip Ncheje, for your kind words. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's now time to give a little background about our speaker. As already established, he is an illustrious son of the land, an alumnus of this university, and he is currently a professor of construction management and head of the School of Construction Economics and Management at Wits University in South Africa. He's a chairperson of the West Africa Built Environment Research, WABA, conference, and a rated researcher by the National Research Foundation of South Africa. Our speaker served as Unity Hall Secretary in the year 2000 to 2001, and SRC President from 2001 to 2002. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker today will be talking about becoming a global academic citizen, Professor Samuel Laryea. Please, a round of applause. Sam, you're welcome.
Marian, thank you very much. Just want to check that you can hear me. Am I audible? I'm sure to those of you who are online, I am probably audible, but just want to check if I'm audible in the room as well.
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Marian, I want to thank you and your team very much, obviously, for the invitation. Pro-VC, I want to thank you very much for your remarks as well. And thank you for being available to chair this event as well. You spoke so well. I was just listening to you, and I thought you had finished. Saying everything that there was to say, because you're so eloquent in addressing the topic. So thank you for those remarks, and also thank you to you and other members of the university management and leadership team. Just sitting here and looking from afar at what's happening on campus, we feel very proud about KNUST and the direction in which it's moving. So thank you and your management team for your leadership as well. And then I want to thank you as well, Prof. Ncheje. Thank you for your leadership as well of OGR, and thank you also for the words you spoke. And then Marian, let me thank you as well, you and your team, for your leadership of the Young Researchers Forum. It's beautiful to see what's going on. And I just want to agree with Prof. Ncheje when he says that when he looks across the campus, he sees a group of very, very capable people, most of whom I believe can certainly become global academic citizens, if they take the right steps. So thank you to all of you for the opportunity. I want to welcome all those who've joined, both in the room and also online. I am hoping that, I'll be able to share some useful ideas with you. What I've done, I'm going to share my screen shortly, but I have tried to keep this very, very simple. I don't want to talk about complicated things. I'm going to talk about things that are very practical and things that I have actually done. So I'm just going to try and share my screen, and then I'm going to get started. Okay. Okay. So I have shared my screen now, and I believe you can see it. I just thought I should start with this background slide. So Marian, thank you. You did mention that I am based at Wits University in South Africa. So growing up, when I was at KNUST, I knew nothing. I knew nothing at all about universities like Wits University. But Wits is actually located in Johannesburg in South Africa. And, I joined Wits University in 2012. I joined Wits from the University of Reading in UK. I will tell you a bit more about that shortly. But last year, Wits University celebrated 100 years. And, it's a really top university in the world. And you can see there's this picture here at the bottom. This picture here at the bottom, if you can see it. But last year, when Wits University was celebrating 100 years, and the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, actually for one day, they actually mounted a digital banner of Wits University there in Times Square. So it's, the university of people like Nelson Mandela. It's a very significant university in the world. So I am based here at Wits University. I've been here since 2012, and in the time, one of the things I have unfortunately had to pick up for my sins is to have become head of the school, and I will talk to you a bit about that as well. But the topic we're going to be talking about today is, I think it's a really important topic, because as Prof said, certainly there was probably a time in the past where maybe being academic, wherever you are, whether you're in the UK or America or Ghana or Nigeria or in Kenya or wherever, probably mostly entailed you maybe operating within the confines of your four walls. But, especially with globalization and the digital world in which we live, that has changed considerably. And, I think the meaning of what it means to be an academic these days has been completely redefined. And one of the things I think all of us should be looking to do, especially, so for example, I'm sitting here in Johannesburg and I'm interacting with, colleagues, most of you, I believe, who are at KNUST, but also colleagues based in other places as well. So it's a very different world, and there are new rules of the game, etc. And, it's important that we get to understand what these rules are and, and play according to these rules and excel and get to the very top of, academia. I wanted to begin with this. So, Marian, as you mentioned, I am very proud of my KNUST heritage. I'm extremely proud of it. And, obviously without those excellent foundations and roots I had in KNUST, certainly I wouldn't be where I am today. So, I want to thank the institution as well. So, I just because I was giving this talk, I went into my archives to try and see what photos I could find. And, I don't know how many of you can spot who this man is. So I'm just putting, there's a guy when we were on campus, every day he would write his name and then he would write into brackets PhD. So that's this guy, RC Abedu. And this photo was actually taken, I think, around the year 2000. So about 23 years ago. So that's RC Abedu. And I used to be Unity Hall secretary. He used to be Unity Hall master at the time. And I think we took this photo during one of the times when we were having a handing over ceremony. So that was me there at the back. And this one was significant. Finding this photo really reminded me of my times at KNUST. This photo you see here is a photo that we took in 2001. So that's the chancellor of the university sitting there, Otumfuo. So that was the day, I think it's sometime in October 2001. So that was the day I invited Otumfuo about 22, 23 years ago. I invited him to come and lay the foundation stone for the SRC hostel. I was in Ghana. I was on campus about 2 months ago, and Maria and I remember you went to drop me off at the SRC hostel. I was looking at the building, and I felt a great amount of fulfillment. But this was the day when I invited the chancellor to come and lay the foundation stone for the hostel. And today it's such a beautiful hostel. The many students are staying there. They are all happy, and a lot of them have no idea, how that started. And then this was my graduation day. You can see, obviously, that all of the dignitaries are sitting down while I do the handshake. So for those of you who understand the traditions of KNUST, you would know from this photo that I certainly did not get a first-class degree when I was at KNUST. Those of you who had first-class degrees, and I'm sure a lot of you here, probably got first-class degrees because I know most of the colleagues at KNUST are the really intelligent ones. So I'm sure a lot of you got first-class degrees and they stood up for you, to shake your hands when you were getting your degrees. So that's my graduation. This was, one of the photos, for the SRC handing over ceremony when I was handing over. Okay, so that's just to give a bit of background and how proud I am with my KNUST association. in relation to the talk itself, what I want to do is I don't want to talk for very long. So I want to be very crisp and I want to get straight to the point. And so I'm really going to talk about 10 quick points. And I'm hoping that each of these points, it's like getting into a house. And what I found was sometimes you can get into a big house and to be able to get into each of the rooms, what you really need, I think, is to know, the keys to each room and, which keys you can use to open the doors into, the different rooms. And so I'm hoping that each of these points I talk about can provide certain keys, which will help, you to open your own doors. So I'm hoping that I can do that, in about 30 minutes, and then we open the floor for, questions and a good discussion. Everything I'm going to talk about it in a very, very honest, very, very, constructive and very collegial way, because we are all colleagues and we're here to share ideas. And then the other thing I want to talk about, you might have read the flyer. One of the things I talked about is the fact that academia is an elite sport.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. And it is an elite sport. And, the question really which struck me last year was when I was... Okay, so sorry, there was an echo in the sound, but I think it's gone now, so I'm just going to continue. Okay. So last year, there's something which really struck me during an interview process. One of the jobs I must do as head of school is to, look around the world and try and find the best people and try and recruit them, into the school so that they can come in and help to achieve the strategic goals of the school. So sometime, for about 2 years now, there's a particular gentleman I've been working on trying to, recruit him to come into my school at Wits University. And I was facing, a particularly major challenge when it comes to him, because per the criteria of my university, I could only recruit him as an associate professor, not as a full professor. In his institution where he was, he had been assessed, for the position of full professor, and I think he had to wait about 3 or 4 months or so, and then he would step into the role. And then another university here had offered him full professor as well. And so I was really up against it. And what I could offer him was associate professor because the criteria of my university wouldn't allow for us to appoint him at the level of full professor. So I did discuss this with him in a very honest, in a very open way. And I persuaded him, and I said to him, but just consider it, and when the time comes, please just apply, and then we can take the rest from there. Okay. So time comes and I prepare the advert and everything. I advertise for the position. And then, I say to him, please, I have advertised the position. Please apply for this position. And so after much persuasion, he agrees and then he applies. So that's first step, and I'm very happy about this. So eventually he's shortlisted, and then we organize the interview. And then he comes to sit in the interview. And obviously, one of the key questions we normally ask during the interviews is, why have you applied to come to Wits University? And I will never forget what he told us on the panel. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with, I wasn't familiar at all with Formula One, the motor racing Formula One. So I don't follow it much, and I did not understand it much. But since then, I have had a lot of conversations with him because what he said was so remarkable. Everybody on the panel had to pay attention. So what he explained to us in response to, why he had considered applying to come to Wits, is he had been saying, or he was saying, that he had also been reflecting on that same question. And he had been reflecting on the question, and the question he had been asking himself is, does he want to be a lead driver for Force India? So, there are different teams that compete in the Formula One. So apparently one of the teams is a team that is called Force India. So, they also compete, but they never really win Formula One, okay? But they also compete. And then there are those there, and then there are the teams that win, like Mercedes, like Ferrari, and also like Red Bull. So the question what he was explaining to us in the interview was, he's been wondering whether he wants to be a lead driver for Force India or a driver in Mercedes or Ferrari or Red Bull, and rather have the chance with determination to become the lead driver one day and win the Grand Prix. And, for us, that was quite a remarkable way of explaining it. And so I guess, the choice, one of the choices that faces us as academics is to also consider this and ask ourselves, what kind of driver do I want to be? Do you want to be the lead driver for Force India and never win the Formula One or never win a Grand Prix? Or do you want to be a driver in Ferrari or Mercedes or Red Bull and have a real chance to win the Grand Prix one day? And for me, that is a very good analogy to kind of illustrate reasons why, each of us would want to become a global academic citizen. And so that is something to consider. So for those of you who might just like me to simplify this, yesterday I was having a chat with him and I was asking him, can you just explain this to me further? And he said, it's just like football, because a lot of you might rather be interested in football. So he said, it's just like football. He said to me, there are teams like, for those of you who follow, the English Premier League, for example, then there's teams like Man City and Arsenal and Chelsea and Man U, etc. So he said to me, would you rather be the captain of Leeds United? I'm sorry if you're a Leeds United fan, but would you rather be the captain of Leeds United and never win the Premier League, or would you rather be a player in Man City or Arsenal? So I was going to say Man U or Chelsea, but these days, your chances of winning the league, is not as great. Okay, but I would rather be a player in Man City and work hard, to become the captain or the lead driver and win the Premier League one day. So that's basically what he was trying to explain. And, just one point I want to make on that before I get to the talk itself is definitely, if you want to change tomorrow, then, there are obviously things we need to change about the way we operate today in order to be able to end citizenship, as Prof VC was explaining. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get straight into each of the 10 points, and then we're going to summarize, and then hopefully we're going to get into a good discussion session. What I wanted to do was to just give you a bit of, context into my background and what my career journey has looked like in the past 21 years, because this will help you to contextualize or to connect the dots when I get to some of the points I'm going to be explaining very soon. Okay, so let's start with each of the 4 points. And I am sure that a lot of you have already crossed this stage. So I think it's good. But for those, who are now, starting out, just one of the key points I want to mention is that in terms of becoming a global academic citizen, I think that the first point I just want to share is that, doing a good PhD and finding the right mentor, having a very good mentor is absolutely essential in terms of establishing strong foundations for yourself and getting people who can guide you. So that is a really important, point I wanted to, share. And so, here, that's what I wanted to say. This is around 2006, when I was doing my PhD at the University of Reading, and you can see, I was really lucky to be mentored, by a guy who was one of, the real stalwarts in our field, Professor Will Hughes, and that relationship really, really, really continued, over the years. And it's been a relationship of mentoring, which really, really benefited me a lot. And so I do believe that if you find the right mentors who can share the experience with you and guide you properly, that is certainly a very important key, which can put you on your way to becoming a global academic citizen. So I just wanted to mention that as the starting point. And then let's look at point number 2. Here is where it really begins. One of the things I found really, really helpful in terms of profile building, in terms of presenting yourself to the world internationally in your academic field, I found that one of the things you need to try and do is very early on in your career, try and put publications in the biggest journals in your field. This is really important because you've got to, to become a global academic citizen, you've got to announce yourself in the field and you've got to establish your research identity. I will talk about research identity in point number 5. And you've got to find a way to do it strategically. And so just to, I use this to give an example. Soon as, I was done with my PhD, and I believe it was a really excellent PhD. You will see that in 1 or 2 slides coming up. But one of the things I was able to do was I was able to, from, that research project, the very first, paper I published, from that was in, the topmost journal in my field. And, that was massive. And then once I had done that, I selected the 2 other, journals, which was this journal, US journal, which is the Journal of Construction, Engineering and Management. There was another one, Engineering, Construction and Architectural Management. And then I put, papers. I wrote some really, really big papers and put them in these big journals. And, the acknowledgement and the recognition, and the way, I put those papers, into those journals, really, really, really got a lot of people, writing to me. And that played a very, very big role in helping me to establish my research identity within the field and getting, others to, write to me to begin collaborating with me. So, I was just looking back as part of my reflections, and this was, I think one of those years around 2011, and this was in my office at the University of Reading in the UK, and I think after I had done that, you can see. So these were copies of those journals in which those papers were published in the different journals, and there's a really, really good feeling I was getting from the whole thing. But all of those things really, really played a very significant role in my journey, and they played a very significant role in helping me to announce myself in the field, and getting the attention of the leaders in the field in relation to the new kid on the block. So that's a really important thing you need to do, and find a way to do it strategically, which is just make sure that you've got best in all the best journals, so that at least people will be able to see and recognize your work. So that was an important step. The next thing I want to talk about, it's important to try and find something in your field that you can develop and lead consistently well over a sustained period of time. In terms of, I think the recognition I've got in the field, and both here on the continent and also internationally, I don't think much of that would have happened without the Weber Conference initiative. I remember when we first started this on the continent around 2009. It opened a huge, opportunity for so many people. And today, a lot of the people, whom we've developed, through this network, a lot of them are spread all over the world. But that was something significant, which, I led, and, it's continued to grow, massively and significantly. And through that, a lot of things have been done, which, have created opportunity for international profile and building. And so, I guess the key point I want to share from this is it can be anything at all. It can be a workshop you want to lead. It can be a particular research area you want to develop. It can be just anything at all. But you've got to find your niche within your field. You've got to develop it, and you've got to lead it consistently well over a sustained period of time. And then, hopefully that is going to help you to become known or better known in the field. Okay, so that point number 3 is really important as well. The other thing I want to talk about is if you have research work that is good, try and present it for awards, especially the best awards. Once I had finished my PhD at the University of Reading, I remember every year the University of Reading hands out awards, research awards, to people across various faculties. So at the time, I was in the School of Construction Management and Engineering. And so in each faculty, people had to present the research work that they had done. And my school was in the Faculty of Science. And so in late 2011, we submitted, work. I submitted my work. Others also submitted their work as well for the best, best paper prize, in the faculty for that particular year. And I did very good research, and I published them in some of the best journals. And so I submitted, my work for one of the awards. And, surprisingly or interestingly, I won the award that year for the best research paper in the Faculty of Science. And that gave me a huge feeling of confidence. And, that really, really helped me a lot with my profile and building. It really motivated me, to do more. And so, when you, and I'm sure a lot of you, I've won awards like this, like you go for a conference, for example, and you win the best paper prize, you know what things like that have done for your confidence and have done for your profile building and within your field. And so those kind of things are very good. And so anytime there's an opportunity to present your work for some kind of recognition or for some kind of award, I strongly encourage you to do that. And this is another, award, I picked up at the University of Reading as well. So one of the things, and I'm going to talk about it in a bit, but in the UK, one of the things everybody has to do, when you're a lecturer, you obviously do your PhD, and then on the basis of that, maybe you can get recruited as a lecturer. But just the fact that you got a PhD doesn't necessarily give you the skills to be an effective teacher in the higher education environment. And so one of the things you go to do during your probation period is to do what they call, your teaching qualification or your postgraduate certificate in academic practice. And so all of the new lecturers in the university will normally get put onto the program, and everybody has to do it. And that program has 3 components. There are a couple of courses you attend, you write a teaching portfolio, and then you do a teaching and learning research and project as well. And so when I did mine between 2009 and 2011, and with the project I did, so this was assessed across the university, and I won the award for the best project across the university. That was massive. That was very big. And, that, also did, my confidence a lot of good. And it really encouraged me to do more. Then I left the University of Reading and moved to Wits University in South Africa. When you get to South Africa, there is, it's an interesting system. They call it, so in South Africa, they've got this national body they call the National Research Foundation. One of the things that the National Research Foundation does is that the National Research Foundation rates individuals. So let me just explain a bit what it means. When I was in the UK, there used to be a system in the UK which was called the Research Assessment Framework. So the way they do the Research Assessment Framework in the UK is that departments are rated. And so all departments will put their work together and then make a submission. And then the departmental submission is then assessed to give the department a rating or a star. That's how they do it in the UK. So I get to South Africa, and what I find is that it's a completely different system. It's not departments that are rated. It's individuals that are rated. So you submit your body of work to the National Research Foundation, and then it goes through a process of international evaluation, sends to people around the world to evaluate you. And then they evaluate you, and then based on the feedback that comes back, they assign a rating to you. So they've got, different, there's an A rating, there's a B rating, there's a C rating, there's a P rating, and then there's a Y rating, and then they assign a rating to you. But one of the things I picked up, as shortly after I got to South Africa, was I managed to get a research rating. And that was big. And when I say it's big, of all the academics in South Africa, only about 17% of active academics in South Africa are rated researchers. The others are not. And so only about 17% of academics in South Africa are rated researchers. Okay, so if you are a rated researcher, it's a pretty big deal. And so you go through this process once every 5 years. So it's not something you get for life. It's something you get, it's valid for a period of 5 years. And then after 5 years, you must resubmit your self-evaluation again to get rated. And so I've gone through this process twice. And while I've been here, and on both occasions, I've been successful and I've been rated. And so that too really, really helps to distinguish you, things like that. And then, I've applied for grants where I've been successful. And that's, has also, been very helpful. And then there's an award at the university as well. I applied for it, got that award. And I've gone on, to get other awards as well. So the point I'm making here is present your work and present yourself, whenever there's opportunities for awards, do present it, because whenever you get any of those things, it helps with your profile building and also helps you to build your confidence. Okay. Point number 5, and this for me is really important, and it's at the core of becoming a global academic citizen. You need to build your identity as a researcher. So when I talk about this, for many years, the goal of a lot of our, predecessors was, you know how universities work. So you need to, achieve a certain number of publications, for example, to help you get promoted to the next level. So that is what people focus upon. And then, it doesn't really matter in a way it's published or the quality of it. They just want a certain number of publications, to get promoted. That is fine. But for people who really, really want to establish a very strong and global reputation and go on to become global academic citizens, it's really important that you try and establish for yourself a very clear research agenda. So I was reflecting on this, and it occurred to me, when I was in the UK working as an academic, the first 3 years of your appointment was probation. In that probation period, there are 3 things you needed to do in order to get confirmed for your probation. So number 1, you had to complete your higher education teaching qualification, because that is what certifies you to become a teacher in the higher education context, a university teacher. So you had to complete that. Number 2, you had to win your first grant, your first research grant. So that had to be a competitive research grant. So it's not something that you win within your university. It should be an external grant that you win. So you had to win a research grant. And then the third area, you will go through an evaluation by your head of school. And the key question that they would ask is, what is your research area? So that question was the most important question, which is, as soon as your name is mentioned, what comes to people's mind within the field? So as soon as your name is mentioned, for example, people say, for example, oh, molecular medicine. As soon as your name is mentioned, oh, it's this aspect of physics, it's this herbal medicine, it's pharmaceutical, whatever. So your name must be able to be associated with a very clear, research area. And until, you can establish that, you wouldn't really pass probation. So it's really important that you establish very, very clearly a research area for yourself within the field, not just within the local environment where you are, but globally. When your name is mentioned, it should be clear to most people in the field exactly what your research area is. Earlier on, and then so that's what was the system in the UK, and that was I found was very important in terms of establishing a clear research area and identity. And then when I go to South Africa, I told you about the NRF ratings. There were basically 3 main criteria that everybody needed to fulfill in order to get rated as a researcher. The first one was the quality of your research outputs. And so this is whether you are publishing your research outputs in the very best journals globally. And then not just that, but the second one was coherence. For example, I remember in the year I moved to South Africa, I had moved here from the University of Reading, and there's another guy who had moved from the University of Southampton and come to Reading as well. And we both applied for NRF rating at the same time. He had way more papers than I did, lots of papers. But he didn't get an NRF rating. And it really came as a surprise to a lot of us. But the reason was because he didn't have coherence. Some of it was about, mining things in Chile. At other times, it's about, marketing. At other times, it's about construction. So it was all over the place. And so for a person like this, you cannot really say exactly what their research area is. And so that coherence in their body or work was lacking. And so that was the issue. And then you've got to have impact as well. When so if you're doing any research in your field, you've got to have research impact. Your research has got to have some kind of impact on others in the field. It's either they are citing your work, they are looking at your work and reading it and citing it and using it to inform the work that they're doing, or some kind of impact within industry. But there's got to be a good level of impact to your work. And so if you can tick all of those things and you've done it over a sustained period of time, then you can get a rating. And as I explained earlier on, it's not really a rating that is forever. Every 5 years, you have to go through the same process. And so you always have to be on your toes and always make sure that you are on top of your game. So, and this is really important. And one of the key things identify a very clear research area for yourself and build very, very solidly a clear research identity for yourself. So that's an important thing. The next thing I want to talk about is also something that is really important. So point number 6, and here there's a couple of things I'm just going to highlight. So you've got to find a way to build a network for yourself internationally. And so I identify different levels. Find a way to build your network nationally, do it regionally within the sub-region, build a network for yourself across the continent, and then also go on to build a network for yourself globally. It's really important that you do this. And then I have carefully selected the words here because you see what I've written here is find or create it. There are times when, somebody might have a really good mentor, people have done things and they invite you to do the stuff and it's given to you. That's fine, that's excellent. But there are times when, for some of us, you don't get it that way. And you actually have to go in search of it and find it yourself. Or if nothing exists, you go to create it. So for example, when it comes to the story of Wayback Conference, for example, I created it, it's something that was created, from scratch. And it's done a huge amount of, good for people, across the continents. The impact has been, massive. And so these are things, I did, many, many years ago, about 15 years ago, but this is just going, round in those days. Nowadays, it's technical universities, but this was at Cape Coast, for example. This was, at Kumasi Technical University. That was, I think, Sunyani. This was Tamale, and then this one is, so this one always reminds me of a very funny story. So there I am, I'm standing here, and then the guy standing next to me. So he is currently the Vice Chancellor of Taka University, Reverend John. I think it's Reverend Prof. John Shen. So there were donations I used to make to various universities in those days. So I think I had said to them in advance, I've got a few books that I want to come donate to them. A few books, and that's what I wrote. The day I got to the university, there was an entourage of media people there. And I was wondering, what these media people doing here? And then I learned from one of the guys, no, you said you were going to bring us, a big donation of books. And so we invited media people to come and cover it. I said, no, it's only a few books, I wanted to donate to the institution. And so, because they had already invited, a lot of media people, I think someone, quick thinking, came up with a plan and said, actually, let's pop into our library and, just put some books in boxes and then we can use it for the donation. So that is what, happened here. So, so that's what happened. And in the end, everyone got the media got a good outcome. They were able to cover their story. The institution got a good outcome and we all got a good outcome. So everybody was happy. But that's always an interesting story. But find a way to build, your network across, various institutions at the national level, do it at the regional level as well. And, I think there is almost, not an institution I haven't really been to in the sub-region. But, you go around, University of Lagos, University of Benin, everywhere, there, interact with people, get to, learn ideas. And, everywhere you go, there are things, that you will pick up or learn. And, all of that, that's helped. This was about 15 or so years ago. This was an FUT Mina, so there's a university somewhere in Mina, and this was the Deputy Vice Chancellor at the time. And a lot of these guys are actually friends. So this gentleman here is Professor Kabir Bala. At the time, just a colleague in the field. Today, he's the Vice Chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. And for those of you who know Ahmadu Bello University, very huge university in Nigeria. This was at OAU in Ife. But doing these kind of activities really, really help you to build your network across the region. And then, obviously, you want to go beyond the region as well. And, get networks in other institutions across the continent. I remember, for example, for many, many years, about 6 or 7 years, I remember, accepting external examiner appointments in Kenya, for example, and every year I had to go there about 2 or 3 times, just doing that job. But things like that really, really help. There are times when, I've been to countries like Lesotho, chairing accreditation and panels, and that, has been something that's also, helped me a lot, in terms of my network and building. And there are times when, like Botswana, I used to hear a lot of very nice things about them. I've been, there on academic visits. All of those things help you in a very significant way to build, your network across the continent as well. And then you've got to do it, you've got to begin to find a way to do it on a global level as well. Obviously, I know a lot of you are already attending a lot of international conferences. That is excellent. And I remember there was a time about 15 years ago, I used to, just growing up, I remember I used to think about people like, all the names you used to hear, Archimedes and, Pythagoras and Einstein and, Isaac Newton and all these guys. And, sometimes I think about these guys, I think about universities like the University of Cambridge and University of Oxford, and, just to think that, there was a time when there were professors there like, Isaac Newton and co doing work, and they did, very important work, which has gone all over the world, and everybody in every corner of the world is applying, is using applications of their work. And, one of the things I actually determined or said, back then was, I want to go to places like Cambridge and like Oxford, because if the spirit of people like Isaac Newton and co, is in these institutions, then, I definitely want to be there, for some of these spirits to enter me as well. And, I made it a point and I went there and, I found it very, very inspiring. And so all of those things and building, networks and connections in people there, is very, very important in terms of becoming a global academic citizen. And then the other thing I want to talk about, point number 7, so I'm gradually drawing to a close. Point number 7 is, within that network you build, try and find a way, to cultivate key relationships within your network, because those key relationships are going to help you a lot. What I found, so a lot of those people are going to be the ones who, for example, send invitations to you to come, maybe give a keynote, to come be an external examiner, to come, do various things. So that's really important. And then what I found, a lot of them will review your grant proposals and applications. And, this, is a relationship, I started many, many years ago. Very, very famous guy in the world. His name is Roger Flanagan. He's led many, many things in our field around the world. But Roger became a very, very good friend of mine. And, I've invited him to, speak at several of my conferences, etc. But many, many, many years after starting the relationship, when the time came for me to apply for full professor, Roger Flanagan is one of the guys I called up to stand for me as a referee in terms of providing a recommendation. And so a lot of those people will later on become people, who provide your references and help you to get access to important jobs. This, some of you might know him, another, KNUST, a very, very significant top KNUST alumni in the world. This is Professor George Ofori, who has played he's given talks at KNUST a few times, but he, within our field, the built environment field, he's one of the top 3 people in the field globally, top guy. But he's one of those who played a very major role in mentoring me. And, one of the reasons I am in the role I am today, I think it's because of people like Professor George Ofori, because he's actually one of the guys who, as soon as he saw the opening, he said to me, Sam, I encourage you to really apply for this, because I think that the person they need is you. And he said, if you do decide to apply, I want to be one of those who write your references for you. And, sometimes that is what you need. So within the network, try and cultivate some key relationships, because those relationships are going to come back and help you and advance your career. Okay. And then the other one I want to talk about, and this is a really important one from the perspective of OGR. Applying for research funding is really, really important. Anytime I think about this in research terms, I normally like to say that this is like the oxygen. Right? It's like the oxygen. You need funding to do research. You need funding to do things. And if you don't buy, the ticket, you're never going to win the lottery. And so you've got to develop grant proposals and submit these grant proposals and apply for funding, because the more funding you can get, obviously the better it is, that your research, and networking and network building activities are going to be. And so that is important. And, in my own journey, I've applied for a lot of these things. And it's true, getting or winning grants that I have been able to do a lot of the things I've been able to do. So, for example, this was my first postdoc. He's a full professor of architecture now in Nigeria, UNN, University of Nigeria, in Nsukka. Back then, he came to Wits, came to work with me. He, very passionate researcher, top guy. I was really lucky, to have him. But the reason I got him was because I applied for funding, which enabled me to award a postdoc position to him for 2 years. And we did a lot of excellent work together. And, we've done other things as well. I've got postdoc grants through that I've been able to fund a lot of my research and network building activities, with the grants that I won along the way. So this one is really, really important. And these days, there's a lot of grants, funding opportunities. Obviously, if you've got the right ideas and if you can collaborate across disciplines to come up with proposals for multi and interdisciplinary projects. So this one, I can't emphasize it enough. It's really, really important that all of us engage seriously in grant winning activity in order to be able to use it to create opportunities to enable us to become global academic citizens. Okay. And then number 9 is another really important one I want to talk about. And these days, this is one of the really challenging issues because a lot of us are under pressure. We just want to churn out papers, okay? You all know the pressure to get promoted. And we're doing so much teaching and we're doing so much admin. There isn't really a lot of time, sometimes to, dedicate a lot of time for research. And so we just want to get published anyway. And so, even if it's not really the best kind of place to publish, we still at least want to get something going. But the message I want to share, I have been very, very selective in my publication strategy. For a long time, I sat and I watched, maybe some colleagues publish a lot of papers every year. I never felt the pressure. I always, chose to focus on quality rather than quantity. And so it was very important for me that, I'm very careful about my publication strategy and I publish only in the right places. I publish only quality papers because for me, if I publish a paper and no one is citing those papers, for me, there's very little value. So just to be honest with you, there are a lot of people who are okay just to publish a paper and they publish a paper. For me, when I publish a paper, I want others in the field to cite that work. And I do actively track, all of my publications just to see whether others are following the ideas and are citing the ideas that I've written about in the paper. And so the key message here is, for me, my strong suggestion, if you want to become a global academic citizen, do focus on quality. The numbers are important. So if you have the ability to churn out, quality in large numbers, that is excellent. But focus on quality, get quality, work done, do high quality research that people want to hear about, because that also helps, with your citations. Find, the most high impact journals in your field and try and, publish papers there. Nowadays, there's a lot of predatory journals that have popped up all over the world. This, I felt, is something I should mention. By all means, no matter the pressure for promotion, definitely avoid publishing in predatory journals. It will destroy your reputation. And, in all the years that President Kufuor was president, there's just one thing he said, which stuck with me. And, a reputation once destroyed is difficult to restore. And he said that. And I picked it up. And since that time, it's always been one of my guiding principles. Don't destroy your reputation just because of, I've seen professors around the world who have done a lot of fantastic work. Just one paper in a predatory journal or just one paper gone wrong and their whole reputation is tarnished or destroyed. And we don't want to do that because it also affects the reputation of our institutions as well. So by all means, let's avoid predatory journals and let's also definitely avoid unethical publication practices. These days, the consequences are very, very dire. And just remember the analogy I gave at the start. I would rather choose to be a driver for Mercedes or Ferrari or Red Bull, where I have a chance to win, Formula One, than the lead driver for Force India. So just focus on quality, and rather choose to be with the best people and when the best people are moving forward. Okay. Then the last thing I want to talk about, just before we get into a discussion session, is you've got to think very carefully about growing your research influence within your field. And so just from today, I think one of the key things you need to think carefully about how you're going to grow your research influence, how you're going to grow your research impact, how you're going to grow your research metrics. Because nowadays, in terms of the rules of the game, it's very big. Research metrics, it's a really, really big thing. People talk big about citations, about H index, and about those kind of things. There are many different ways to make impact, but these are also very, very important measures of where you are with your research. So pay attention to it. Promote and make your work visible internationally. Sometimes, I've seen colleagues who they publish stuff, and that's where it only ends up in the journal. No, when you publish stuff, actively take steps to promote your research. And so make copies of your research available everywhere, available on your LinkedIn, available on ResearchGate, available on any platform at all where you can make your research available. And explain to people, more important, explain to people why it is important. Explain it in ways lay people can understand. That is very important in terms of promoting your work and, and helping others to connect with the work. And then the other thing I wanted to say in terms of, promoting your work and, getting people to cite your work, choose the titles of your publications very, very carefully. And this particular one is a lesson which has stuck with me in the past, 14 years. Of all the papers I've written, especially, when I started, there was one paper I wrote for one of the best journals in my field, top paper, ISI listed journal. The paper was accepted as it stands. And my mentor, Professor Will, said to me, in his whole career, even he never had a paper accepted as it stands in the best journals in the field. But that paper, interestingly, is one of my lowest cited papers, presumably, best paper which got accepted. Over the years, just reflecting on this paper, I think I didn't choose the right title for this paper, because there are papers I wrote which, I think maybe just because of the titles, maybe also because of the content, but I just feel that the titles were more right than the title I chose for this paper. If I had to do this accept as a stands paper again, I would definitely change the title in order to help the paper gain more traction. So that is just something in relation to publication and strategy. And then for those of you, who have institutional repositories, that is something you want to make use of as well. So when I talk about institutional repositories, there are universities who have repositories where you can deposit versions of your papers, which is the version just before it was published, so that there's no copyright issues. And so just talking about research impact, one of the things, so the University of Reading, for example, I'm sure, most universities have this. So we do keep a repository where all the research published by everyone in the university is deposited. This is basically any paper you write. And I actively, track, my work and where it is in the world. And so yesterday, just because I was preparing for this talk yesterday, I went, there into, it's available online. It gives everyone around the world access to download, those papers. It's basically the same version as the one that is published, except that you cannot make the one that is published freely available to everyone. Whereas if you upload it yourself, the version before it was published, then you can make that version freely available to everyone. And so I always track, the publications. And although, I left now about almost like 12 or so years ago, I always track. And just yesterday, I downloaded this only yesterday. So I found, interestingly, because I haven't checked in, quite some time, I'm still among the top 5 authors, at the University of Reading. And, that always, I think, reminds me of the value of doing enduring work. Work that endures, work that is high quality. And so that's the one, and you've got here on the right-hand side. And then I was looking at this. So this is obviously within the institutional repository These are the most downloaded items, the most downloaded studies, within the repository. And, I found out actually 2 of the top 10 published work in the university's repository, actually my papers, this one, number 8, and also this one, number 6. And so these things really, do motivate me. And so when I say that I focus on quality rather than quantity, it's things like this that give me, the encouragement to continue focusing on quality. Because if you do quality work, if you do work which can stand the test of time, it gets, impact like this. It always feels good to be able to see that you, are in the position among, top authors, of a top university like Reading, and also your work is among the most downloaded work across the institution. Okay. So that is it with the, 10 points I wanted to share. And so this is just a quick summary: getting that PhD, publishing early in the best journals, leading something important in your field, consistently well over a sustained period of time, going for, key research awards, which will help you to build your profile and also your competence, your confidence, building your research identity, very, very important for growing and establishing your citizenship within your field. Find opportunities to build and create your network, cultivate key relationships within your network, apply for grant funding. That is really, really important. It's the oxygen for research. Be very selective in your publication strategy, and then actively grow your research influence and impact. And so much of what I've told you is a story from my own personal perspective. Obviously, if you want to apply any of this, then obviously you've got to adapt it to your own circumstances. It's important I say this. Everyone's journey is going to be different, but the destination is basically the same. We all want to get to the same. Everybody in academia, we all aspire, to get promoted to full professors. We all aspire to be known very well globally within our field. So we've all got common aspirations, but everyone's journey is kind of the same. You have got to put yourself in that position. And sometimes it's not always straightforward. It can take years of struggle and suffering. Don't expect immediate success because it's not an easy journey. It's an elite sport, as I said to you. And if you, can find senior people within the field who have been on that route before, then it's definitely worth getting some advice from them. You will experience some disappointments along the way. Just be patient. Keep doing what you're doing in a consistent way, and success will come. And one of the things I just really want you to remember, as I just bring this to a close, is that Formula One analogy I presented to you, which is always thinking constantly about which kind of driver do you want to be? Do you want to be a driver for the best teams, or you want to be the lead driver for the teams that are never really going to win the Formula One? Thank you very much. Marianne, over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Samuel Laryea, for that wonderful presentation. I think he deserves another round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. You've been busy. So I'll use this opportunity to introduce some special guests that we invited, not in any particular order. Professor Emepe, the Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine, representing the Provost of the College of Health Sciences, Professor Christian Ejari, and in person here with us. And then online, we have Professor Charles Mafu, the Provost of College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Professor Ibo Kodro is also joining us online, former Provost of the College of Science. Professor Bob Miller, Director of the Center for Culture and African Studies, is also online. Mr. Michael Ahinkra, Deputy Librarian, representing the University Librarian, is also joining us online, and a couple of other senior office holders, senior members. Thank you all for joining us. The floor is now open for comments, questions, and our audience online, you are with us, so you can use the chat to express yourself, and your comments will be read out. Participants in person, any comments, any questions? Okay. Please introduce yourself and then you can ask your question.
Thank you very much. Please, my name is Ezekiel Porte at Education Info. And please, I'd want to ask to make your titles very catchy so that you would have your whatever you publish, accessed by many people easily. What are the things that we should look out for? Should we just pick things that we believe would satisfy, will be exciting for the reader? Because I also don't want a case whereby I'll put a title that I think would best fit for my topic, but for my work, I beg your pardon. But then the topic is saying something that is catchy, but somebody goes in there and doesn't really get the full package. Sometimes we are tempted to do that so that our works could also go far. And what would then be the strategy that you would advise that as a young researcher I should do?
All right, Prof. Laryea.
Marian, thank you. I thought you were going to answer that
staying
question.
authentic and not looking out for trending, if you like, and especially in this era of social media.
Yeah. Marian, and please feel free to speak to some of the questions that you've also done, and some of this very successfully. But Ezekiel, so it's a really excellent question you ask. And so the idea is clearly not to misrepresent. The idea is to make your title, obviously, as accurate as possible, but just make sure it's very clear and very straightforward. And it links very clearly to the theme or topic within the field that it's addressing. Okay. So obviously you can craft the best title in the world, but if the content of the work is not good enough, people wouldn't cite it. So obviously it needs to go with the quality of the work that has been done. But the point, the big point I wanted to make with the title matter is that always just make sure that it's very clear, it's very straightforward, and it connects very, very clearly with a specific theme within the field that research is speaking to. Okay.
Much. Ezekiel, I hope you're satisfied. We have a number of online comments here, so I'll pick a couple of them. Samuel Ousubempa says, great presentation, Prof. Is it advisable to be both a global researcher and an industry expert concurrently? If yes, what is the best scenario you could cite?
Thank you, Maria. So is it advisable to be both a global researcher
and an industry expert concurrently?
In an industry. So, the answer is yes. That's the short answer. Then let me go to the longer answer. The thing I know about industry all over the world, and I work very closely with industry. For example, I came for a couple of, I'm giving this presentation from Johannesburg. And so I'm sitting now, I'm in one of the boardrooms. It's a law firm called Weber Wenzel, one of the biggest law firms in the world. So this building I'm sitting in, there's more than 1,000 lawyers sitting in this building. I work very closely with industry. Industry has a lot of problems, and industry is always looking for solutions to their problems. If you are a global researcher, if you are at the forefront of research in your field, if you are at the forefront of knowledge in the field and where you work, chances are industry will be after you every day. Because industry is looking for solutions, they're looking for innovation, they're looking for ideas. And so is it possible to be a global researcher and an industry expert concurrently? Answer is absolutely yes. And it's not even something that you will have to go asking for. Because when you are the top expert, you're the guy who understands something the most, industry is going to certainly come knocking on your door to ask you questions. That question, I guess just connects to, obviously, so what I've said is one aspect. Then the other aspect, obviously, is there are times when we don't make enough time to do research because we have to chase many things in industry, obviously because of no curfew. And that is, obviously, I think one of the key things, I think which sometimes holds us back. And, you've got to understand because, we've got, families and aspirations that we need to obviously take care of. But if you want to play to the level of becoming a global academic citizen, then obviously there are hard choices you've got to make. And sometimes some of those choices may mean that you may not, be able to spend as much time in industry or looking for no curfew as much as you might want. But I think you might also find that the rewards in research terms will be, will accrue for you, quite nicely to the extent that it will be worth, making the choice, to focus and get more research kind of done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On that no curfew note, it triggered something on my mind. In your presentation, you talked about keys to opening doors. Would you like to share a few of your failures so that, because in real life, it's not all rosy, a few of your challenging moments along the way and how you overcame? Before I go back to the questions, please.
Marian, that's a really excellent question because that is one of the things I reflected on, and I actually had a slide on that. And I just want to stick with the 10 points, and so I took it out. But when you look at I wouldn't call it a failure per se, but when you look at the career journey I presented to you earlier on, I spent about 9 years in the associate professor rank. If obviously I had to relive, in my career journey, I wouldn't spend as long as I did. And obviously, there are many reasons for that. So part of the dangers of also, becoming very, very successful is that sometimes it kind of leads you to slow down a bit. And, there were years when I definitely, slowed down. And, I'm just looking back, you shouldn't really slow down. When I say you shouldn't really slow down, it doesn't mean you don't need to make time for yourself to, but just be consistent in the way you publish, be consistent in the way you do your research and also your engagement. So that's just one thing. You've got to be consistent because if you are not consistent and, the time comes where you take your eye off the ball, then, the rate at which, you publish, either the rate in terms of quantity or even, the level of journals that you're able to publish in, you may find that now, you're only able to maybe publish in journals of lower tier kind of quality. So I think that is, maybe the main thing I will talk about. You've got to be consistent. And obviously, one of the things I find is that I have not always had that consistency when it comes to, my research outputs, both in terms of publishing them in the best tier journals and also in terms of publishing, the kind of numbers I would love or I would have loved to publish on a consistent basis each year. So for me, that's, one of the biggest reflections. If I had to live the life again, that's one of the things I'll certainly change. And so for those of you who are yet to, go through that journey, please be consistent, set clear goals, and achieve your goals consistently in terms of what you want to achieve in respect of your research. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much. Consistency and keeping your eye on the ball. Thank you. I have a comment in the chat that says, it's a question actually from Prof. Odro. What type of mindset should we have to improve the quality of the researcher in the Ghanaian context? What type of mindset should we have to improve the quality of the researcher in the Ghanaian context?
Yeah, Prof. Odro, I thought, you would answer that question since you have done this quite well. So I remember meeting you about 2 months ago when I came for Marian. Was it the STEM thing, the female academic thing at KCCR, the one I attended.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Western
remember
get
attending
together,
that.
yes.
Yeah, and I was actually very impressed. Just that. So you guys are doing all the right things, and the rewards are going to come. Very very soon. But in terms of the mindset, Prof. Drew, for me, let me just say two quick things without going into much detail. Sometimes I think we underestimate ourselves, because even just pick the best journals in your own field, regardless of the field you are in, chemistry, pharmacy, any of the engineering disciplines, agric, the social sciences, business management, etc. A lot of the things that are published there, they're not from our region of the world, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be. Absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be. And so in terms of that mindset, we've got to think, in terms of also becoming global leaders. Then the other thing, I want to talk about is, and I've been having this conversation with my colleagues a lot. For example, when you look at a lot of the literature now around energy use, around sustainability, around innovation, there is a lot of things, most of the time, we're trying to follow. I don't see why we can't create big research teams of our own and get them published in journals and have, researchers in other parts of the world like Europe and the US and Australia following, the research teams that we create and publish on. And so in terms of the mindset as well, that's the second area I want to talk about. We should also begin becoming research leaders. So we create the themes that influences or informs the kind of research that others in the field do, including, our colleagues in the US, Europe, and places like Australia and China. So that is also the other thing, I want to talk about. And then lastly, the thing I want to talk about in terms of obviously the mindset is something I wrote in the flyer. There are many, many people who hold the view that for something to be world-class, it has to originate from Europe or North America or Australia. Not necessarily. We can also initiate world-class things from KNUST. We can initiate world-class things from Ghanaian universities. And we've got to have this mindset, and we've got to do it. That's really important. Being world-class or to be world-class or to be a global academic citizen is not just about imitating things of foreign origin. We can also create world-class things and theorize it to the global context. And we're not doing enough of that at the moment. Thanks, Marian.
Thank you very much. Please, any other comments, reactions, questions in person? Okay, I see a couple of hands up. Prof. Emepe.
I think it's a great privilege for me to be here today. And I could relate a lot with what we have been speaking about, over for the past 30 minutes. I came from the University of Ibadan as a professor of veterinary medicine, and through a lot of pressure from some of my very good friends, and I call them mentors in Ghana. One of them is here, Professor Ellis Dabo, who actually stood on my neck to make sure that I joined KNUST. No doubt it has really been a very tough journey, because when you have your research group in the University of Ibadan, you're moving to a new university, I can really relate with some of the pressure and some of those things you have seen. But I've also seen that, well, don't let me say lucky, at least you have a mentor that is very much interested in what you're doing, and to see that you pull through. Some are not as lucky as that, and they were also able to pull through because they have understanding of what research should be. I should say this for this gathering, for us to know that it might not be as smooth as what you have said, but we should have a mindset and have a model to determine to be an excellent researcher, which I feel even people within Ghana and beyond are quality examples that we can follow. One of such you have also said about publishing in the very high impact journal and working with top experts to make sure that they do things right. But I feel we should also stress the need for us to work together as a team and to believe so much in ourselves that we have what it takes to achieve the greatest height we could be thinking of. And that is why we feel we should first look inward to see those top experts that we have around and try as much as possible to work with them and use them as a springboard to reach out to top researchers all over the world. And from there, we will be able to achieve the best. My question for you, actually, looking at some of the things you have done all over the world and touching lives in Nigeria, working with people also in Ghana, and now talking to us in KNUST, I believe strongly that there might have been some plans which you might not be able to divulge at this point, because no matter how you walk outside, you think of coming back home. What are those things you are really putting in place in terms of research, in terms of network, that will make your homecoming in terms of retirement to be highly solidified, such that you will be able to mentor quite a lot of people in Ghana? That's my question.
Professor, you ask such a difficult question. First of all, thank you for those earlier remarks you made. I agree with you completely. And also thank you very much for obviously coming back with your wealth of experience to come and help develop others locally back home and also contribute to the work in the field. So thank you for that as well. Obviously, as you rightly say, it's not everything that can be divulged in a public platform like this. But yes, one of the things I want to say is I have a very active presence on the ground back home. 2 months ago, for example, I was at KNUST. I was there, working with colleagues, doing stuff. Doing stuff in other. I was at Kumasi University, Amosted. So I'm in Ghana all the time, normally, and so normally I am one of those who likes to think that I'm not really living outside of Ghana, although in a way I am, but I'm normally back home a lot. And there's normally a lot of events as well that we run across all universities. There's no university in the country where we don't run events. And we run events all the time. Next week, I'm running a big conference in Ghana for people in the field. So I'm doing this all the time. And so in terms of, the plans, for academic development, industry development, and those kind of things, these are things that I lead and do on a daily kind of basis. But if obviously the question has to do more with, when are you going to be back, full time, then that's obviously one I need a bit more time to process. But in terms of, being home, I think it will also delight you to know that although, we travel around a lot to do many things in many different countries. In terms of my own permanent home, it is in Ghana, and it's not very far away from where you are sitting. So anytime there's a little break or holiday, that's exactly where I am, relaxing, and then, planning for my next step. So that plan too is in motion already. And, obviously, in terms of the long term, I think it's definitely in Ghana. And, obviously, anytime opportunities would come up, to work with others and collaborate with others, to help develop others or to develop the field or, help people, in any way possible. Then obviously it's something I definitely want to do. But a lot of that work is going on already across the country, across the region, and especially across the continent. Because for me, Africa is where I really want to focus. And a lot of the efforts I've spent, although a lot of people in Europe and North America want to come do things, a lot of what I've done, every day is really on the continent, because I feel that where I want to contribute the most to human development is on the African continent, especially in Ghana, but also other African countries. So, Prof, thank you for the question. And maybe when I come around, I would come find you and then can talk a bit more about the specifics around the plan. But thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Prof. I hope you're satisfied with the answer. Okay. Is that a hand up? Okay. Dr. Isuman.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Prof. Lai, thank you so much for your presentation. I've really enjoyed, and I've made a lot of notes, and I believe I'm going to put some of the things into practice as a young lecturer. Laryea, Prof, you are my SRC president when we were in school, and I'm happy to see you. This is Ato. My question is that...
definitely.
Yes.
Colleague of arts, Ato, I do.
Okay.
Seeing you now, I definitely do remember you, and thank you for all those services you used to render to the rest of us, computer services, printing, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I'm happy you remember all that. As a publishing student, I still do them on a consultancy basis. My question is that you are saying that grantmanship is one of the key things we need to engage in as researchers. And for me, after listening to your presentation, I just want you to give me and us one of the key strategies that can drive, motivate me, for me to say that after this presentation, I'm going to follow grantmanship to the core, visit my director at the office and say, Director, I'm in for grants and I'm ready for whatever, the writing, whatever, to be able to, get that exposure and win some of them. What are some of these strategies? Because it's easy saying it, but it's also difficult implementing and going through the processes. What are some of the things? I just tried CREF last time. It wasn't easy, but fortunately, by God's grace, we were able to present something, and we're happy to present something for the first time. And so we want to go international. We've identified few of the calls we are starting tomorrow as a team to work on. What are some of the strategies? So it means that today's presentation, we want to hear something from you to drive us to sit down tomorrow and work. Thank you.
No, thank you. I see Prof. MJJ has turned on his camera and being, at OGR, Prof, I don't know, you may want to, say, I've definitely got 1 or 2 points I'm going to say, but, did you turn on your camera because you want to make some points?
He has good news, I guess.
Sorry, you are muted, Prof. JJ.
Thank you very much. I said I thought you will go first, and
Okay.
then I will.
Okay, brilliant. So, Ato, I think just the first thing I'm going to say is, and here I'm just going to go with the assumption that all of us who are in academia, we all aspire to get to the rank of full professor. Every academic, aspires, to become a full professor one day. And so if that is your aspiration, I would say to you that the oxygen, that's how I describe research funding. It's the oxygen for research. If you want to go for conferences and meet people and hear the latest ideas in your field and share your ideas with the rest of the world, you need funding, you need money. If you want to do a research project, you need funding. If you want to get, other collaborators from other parts of the world to come work with you, or you want to go to them to do, some kind of work with them, you need funding. If you want postdocs, you need funding. These days, there are even some journals, and these are not predatory journals. There are even some good journals that require us to pay some money for open access publishing or article publication charges. I'm not talking about the quack journals, I'm talking about the better ones. And so all of those things, they require funding. And if you aspire, to get to the pinnacle of the career, then obviously one of the things you need is to publish. And, we will only be able to publish and do research and build our network and do a lot of the things, I have talked about if we have research funding. A lot of the things I have done is because I had research funding. And a lot of that research funding, it's because I applied for them. And sometimes it's not because I had the motivation. It's just because it had to be done. Man has got to do what man has got to do. And, sometimes you've got to be creative as well in terms of the way you find the money. I remember, back when I was on campus. And so this is exactly about 20 years ago. So I wanted to go for a conference in Singapore. So I had done a paper. I wanted to go for a conference in Singapore. So I obviously wanted the university to pay for this. So I went to see the vice chancellor. It was Professor Andam at the time. And then, he told me the usual things that vice chancellors say. There's no money. There's no money. I didn't abandon the conference because the VC said there was no money. What I did was, myself, at the time there was a lady, somewhere there around Ahojo. There's a travel and tour company that used to work, with the university a lot. So I wrote a letter. There, they gave me a bit of money. There was a construction company that used to work on campus. I wrote to them. They gave me some of the money. And then I also, at the time, the Prof was the Prof at the time. He had some good contacts in the industry, helped me. I approached some companies. I wrote to them. And those three, with the help of those three organizations, I was able to put the money together. And I went. And the guy who, encouraged me to apply for this current position I'm in until 2026, and who wrote the reference for me, one of the references for me is Professor Jojo Fori, and I met him there in Singapore on that trip. And so some of these things, you never know the door it's going to open for you tomorrow. And so it's really, really, really worth the effort, every effort to go into grantsmanship. And I know that this is one of the things I know OGR has been working really, really hard on. And for the universities in Ghana, I work with almost all the universities on a regular basis. I think KNUST is really, one of the universities that's been, most successful in, this grantsmanship thing. KNUST has done a great job, because when I look around, even the way we've set up, OGR, it's really, really good, and it's active and it's doing things. And, offshoots of, OGR is this Young Researchers Forum, etc. And, things like this are creating opportunity. And so what I would say is that if you aspire to definitely, get to the pinnacle of the academic ladder, you definitely need research funding as an oxygen to drive that aspiration. And that is a good reason. For me, that is definitely a good reason to get up and do it every day. Thank you. Prof. Njoji, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to this from your side.
Just speaking from where you left it. Becoming global research citizen requires that one publishes in good journals, and you cannot publish in good journals if you are not churning out good results. And this is, you cannot do this without getting funding. Let me give you a typical example. I just, at the beginning of the year, through one of my projects, we paid for an equipment with one equipment. We paid for about $52,000. $52,000. There's no way, I'm sure, the department or the college will do that. So without funding, and you can't achieve some of this. And once you are able to conduct your research using some of this high-tech equipment, no journal anywhere will say that they cannot trust the kind of results you are bringing out. And then I also need to highlight that at OGR, we have a very good support system. And I'm happy to say to hear that you applied. Was it last year for CREF? And I'm believing that you are making use of CREF, the kind of skills that you are getting from CREF to go and then source for external funding. We have college reps, we have accountants that will help you developing your budget and a whole lot of other templates that can help you with. And we also here, if you need letter of support, you need letter of intent, due diligence, any other thing that you need with regards to grants matching. That is why we are here. So tomorrow, as you are starting, please be reminded that OGRs is just across the streets. Just come and be more than willing to assist you in submitting your proposal. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Prof. and JJ. Thank you so much for your intervention. Members, we are far behind time. It's almost 2 hours since we started, and we will have to bring down the curtain. Members who joined us online, I'm sorry I could not read out all the questions. You can reach out to Prof. Laryea on LinkedIn, and he will give you responses to the questions on AI and the rest. Or you can route your questions through the Young Researchers Forum, and then we'll get the answers later for you. At this point, I would like to say a very big thank you to you all for being such a good sport. We would like to take the closing remarks from the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Prof. Owusu-Dabo. Please, a round of applause.
Thank you so very much, Professor Marian and Cancer, and for those of you who are online, thank you so very much for sticking very close with us. Importantly today for our keynote and, of course, our renowned scholar, Professor Samuel Lai. I think it's been just wonderful listening to you, and I'm still thinking through the answer you gave to Professor Mipe. That shows that you were a former SRC president. You know, it was a political answer you gave to him. You've touched on very important points, and all those 10 points, I'd just like to summarize in 3, and it's just because I use the acronym Young Researchers Forum, Young Researchers Forum, YRF. So on the key points that you have raised, the 10, I summarize it into 3. The first one, obviously, is that quality will never hide, and that is yourself. If you have quality, so why for yourself? If you have quality, it will not hide. Quality will be projected. It's only a question of time and being strategic. Quality will always be projected. He had quality and still has quality. And therefore, yourself, you focus on yourselves, your competencies, your skills, your knowledge, the things that you have. What is it that you have? Okay, it's a very important question that will keep haunting you as an academic. What do you have? What is it that you have? And those of us who read the Bible, you know, God once asked Moses, what is in your hand? What is it that is in your hand? What do you have? Yourself. Focus on yourself first. Competencies, skills, knowledge, all those things. You know, he touches on that. So for young researchers, why for yourself? R is for resources. For resources. And one of the key resources he talks about is your mentor. Your mentor. I just lost somebody who I called a good friend in science. I've worked with for 21 years. Christian Meyer died just 3 days ago on board a flight to Hanoi, and so this is what I was told. And I got the message. I was heartbroken the whole of, Wednesday or so, or was it Tuesday? He was on board a flight, and was flying business class, arrived in Hanoi, and, he was gone. 74 years old. We've worked together for 21 years, maybe 22. And we've published no less than 40 papers together. Solid in science, and it's because I had a strategic alliance with somebody who understood science. Resources, mentor. That means you also have to be a good mentee. It's important. Oftentimes we're asking for mentors. Create the conduit. Create it. Okay, saying hello. Okay, making time to save 2 minutes, and catch a concept from your professor. Catch a certain idea from your professor. It's creating that conduit and making sure that, the gateway is made for you, for him or her to express what is in him or her to you. It's critical resources. And so there's so many things he talks about, as a conglomerate of things that he talks about that constitute resources. And finally, for the F, he calls it the oxygen of who we are supposed to be, and that is funds. So I have said this over and over again. I'll keep saying it. You are employed. If you want to be a global academic citizen, you must see yourself as an academic. For us, academics, we have been called to solve problems through research questions, answering research questions continually till we expire. This is who we are. Provide solutions through answering research questions on a continuous basis. This is who we are. You're a researcher. You are saying you want to be a researcher. That means you need the funds to answer those, and one of the key people who help you is industry. But in our world, industry is ahead of academia. It's an error. I suggest to you that academia must be ahead of industry. So we are prescriptive. It's unfortunate. I told Professor Marian Kanza we could spend a whole night here because it's getting so exciting, and I don't want to be tempted. I want to summarize. So the point is that funds are your oxygen, and that drives the ideas that you have. The ideas you have will remain in your heart and in your head if you don't go looking for the funds to build that niche which he talks about. Consistency in the area of research. Okay? Consistency. That means you have to have sleepless nights. I employ 279 people on my payroll every month. 279. That requires money. I haven't even added the recent grant on MasterCard. This is just on my infectious disease research. 279 people. Where do you get the money to pay them? You have to go there, look for the money, come, answer the research questions, and then there'll be more research questions being generated. You need more funds, more research questions, more funds, more research questions, more funds. Produce more PhDs, produce more postdocs, produce more, and then industry will be after you. There's no true academic, global academic, who is not being sought after by industry. Professor Samuel, I want to say a very big thank you for your elucidation this afternoon. And we believe that Young Researchers Forum has been inspired, and we believe that going forward, we will consider all the ideas that you've shared with us so that we can continue to bring to the rest of the world who we are, showcase what we believe our competencies, knowledge, and skills, and then we'll be able to transform the populations that we live in, lift up the flag of this Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, the continent of Africa, and indeed a global arena, so that our shadows will not only fall on the four corners of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, but will be sought the world over. Colleagues, ladies, gentlemen, faculty, distinguished persons who are gathered here and those online, I'd like to thank you so very much for your time. I wish you a lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for summing up so beautifully for us, that we should focus on yourself, the resources available, and funding, which is the oxygen that we all need to drive this research agenda. Thank you once again. I would like to invite Dr. Mrs. Mavis Osai to give us the vote of thanks. Please, a round of applause for her.
Thank you very much, Prof. Nkansa. It's been a very wonderful evening listening to Prof. Laryea.
Please, a round of applause for her.
I wish we wouldn't close as well, but I guess everything that has a beginning has an end. And I wouldn't say much because, in fact, as I was sitting by Prof, I said, Prof, you are a retired global citizen, because what Prof. Laryea talked about, it looks like you've gone beyond that. So it's wonderful knowing all of you. I would like to give a very big thank you to God for giving us the grace to be here. We wouldn't be alive and kicking and listening to Prof. Laryea if it wasn't for him. And we started with him, so we thank him so much. Would also like to thank Prof. Laryea so much. Prof, it's wonderful hearing from you. When I saw the flyer, I was like, when I was a junior, that was my senior back then, the SRC president. So it's so wonderful hearing from you. You've made us understand that research is formalized curiosity. So I know we would live here as young researchers, prying and poking and looking for funds to help us do our research. Would also want to thank all of you in here gathered. When we came here, it was a sad sight, but it's nice to see a lot of you in here and those of you who are online. I would like to end by thanking our chair so much again for allowing himself to be used to grace this occasion nicely. To all of you here, thank you so much. If you are not here or you weren't here, we wouldn't have a nice program. I'll end by saying that academic success depends on research and publications, like we all know. So I'm sure as we are living here, we'll be going as good academics, going out to research and publish, so that at the end of the day, we're going to be very good academic citizens. Thank you so much for your audience.
Thank you very much, Madam. It's now time for the closing prayer. Reverend Father now.
For those of us who can rise, may I plead your indulgence to rise for prayers. Almighty and ever-living God, we are so much grateful to you for the gift of our lives. We thank you for our dear and prestigious university, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We thank you for the Office of Grants and Research, and we thank you in a very unique way for Young Researchers Forum. We thank you for all the planning that has gone into organizing this second edition for us to enjoy and be blessed with our own Professor Sam, for blessing us with his knowledge experience about how best we can put out there our various research work so that we can gain global citizenship in academia. We thank you for all these, and we pray that we continue to be inspired and encouraged, that we too will do what is needful in order to gain that global citizenship that we need and find fulfillment in also in our academic journey. We thank you for all these blessings, and it is our prayer that all that we have heard, you continue to grant us the graces and blessings that we need to be able to put them to practice and gain this that we have all enjoyed this evening. May your blessings and favors be upon us wherever we find ourselves. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Father. Before we take our leave, we'll be taking a group photograph. But let me add my voice to the thank yous to those of you who made it here in person, those on YouTube, those on Zoom. Thank you so much for joining the Young Researchers Forum. This is where we draw the curtain on the second edition of the Renowned Scholars Dialogue. My name is Marian Asantu Nkansa, your moderator. Thank you. Bye-bye, and see you next year for the third edition. Bye.
I've got my brother MOG on this one. Show him some love, people.